learners, in today's lecture, I will be introducing you to the post-colonial writings. In order to understand the post-colonial writings, you must acquaint yourself with the literature of post-colonial times. Now, what is this post-colonial literature? Post-colonial literature is a discourse rooted in the experiences of the colonized individuals. I hope you know what colonization means and who were the colonized individuals. Even Indians were colonized, Africans were colonized. So this post-colonial literature encompasses both ethical and political perspectives. This literature concerns with the reclaiming of suppressed narratives by utilizing some interpretive, subjective methods to challenge the dominant colonial narratives and power dynamics. Now, what was happening during the post-colonial times, which is as good as far as in the 20th century itself, the dominant colonial masters started disseminating a discourse about the colonized people, and they started distorting the information about these people. So post-colonialism has been critiquing the privileged sides of discourse and is stemming from the cosmopolitan or the uprooted diasporas located in the metropolitan cities. Now, people who migrated from one place or people who were used as slaves in a few countries, it is the discourse of those indigenous people, the lived experience of those who were colonized as well as in their subsequent migrations or as secondary diaspora forms the basis of post-colonial literature. So I hope you by now can very well understand that post-colonial literature is the lived experience of the colonized individuals, and it stems from the uprooted diaspora and the experiences, bad experiences of the colonized individual. It is a response to the dominant hegemonic discourses which were disseminated by the powerful group or the colonizer. A few seconds ago, I just acquainted you that post-colonialism encompasses both political and ethical stances. So it refers to a very diffusive kind of timeline rather than a progressive or a linear timeline. As the post-colonial writings try to reclaim the facts of the colonized lives, the narratives range from epistemological inquiries, storytelling, oral sources, memory in post-colonial writing to provide first-hand experience of the colonized. If we have a look at the archival records, we will find that the subordinated lives of the colonized people have almost been made invisible. For example, in 2012, it was revealed that the archival records offering damning evidence of colonial crimes were hidden away by the British colonizers as they exploited the colonies. Thus, interpretive, imaginative, and subjective methods become very important in the post-colonial studies. Anne Stoller adopts a method of reading along the grain to find out all such disruptions, the methodical rationalities of imperial archives, and seeks to call attention to the submerged counter-narratives of the colonial project. You will also find that human geographers in various of writings, even in novels, poetry, music, and visual arts, try to form a cultural production that offers a means of post-colonial intervention. These human geographers enliven the experiences of the potentially obscured by methods quantified and verified only through the colonial archive, unsettling teleological narratives relegating colonialism to the past, and reframe the histories and geographies from the perspective of the colonized. So when we talk about post-colonialism, we should also understand that these terms decolonial, anti-colonial are also interchangeably used in order to highlight the questions of power dynamics, the power relationship, positionality and responsibility of both the colonizer and the colonized. Post-colonialism again refers to some theoretical concepts, approaches and interventions that deal with diverse effects of the interaction between the colonizer and the colonized. So the conceptualization and focus of the post-colonial analysis is very diverse and informed by different schools of thought. For example, postmodern and Marxian approaches have significantly influenced the formation of the post-colonial discourses. These origins provide a very distinct critical edge in the post-colonial analysis and often encourage specific actions towards a multi-level liberation and emancipation of communities which have suffered from isolation, oppression, and discrimination, all resulting out of colonialism. So, I hope by now you have been able to understand that whatever is post-colonial, decolonial, or anti-colonial is highlighting the power dynamics. It is referring to the positions of the colonizer and the colonized. So, it is giving us some theoretical concepts and approaches that deal with this kind of an interaction between the colonizer and the colonized. So, the conceptualization of the post-colonial analysis also amalgamates certain thoughts from diverse schools. Significantly, postmodernism and Marxism is greatly influenced by the formation of these political discourses. Also, you must know that there is a vast difference between postmodernism and Marxism because it creates a diverse and rigorously debated inherent self-contradictory analysis, and this is an observation by Barlow made in 1993 and Metzen in 1999. So they believe that even within the broad realm of the critical theory, certain aspects of colonialism are targeted by objections and criticisms. The lack of even loosely homogeneous discourse and the fragmentation of the oppressed people's experiences in the name of an ill-defined diversity have created space for a heated debate within the communities of theorists, scholars, activists, and social movements. Going back to the historical context of colonialism, one understands that post-colonial analysis is identifying the beginning of colonialism in the period of a very rapid, violent colonial expansion of European powers. Now, what was the need for this kind of a violent colonial expansion by the European powers? Because there was a need for natural resources. They were in quest of a global control. They wanted to become masters of the world, masters of the globe. There was a competition between the European empires introducing a new way of exploring, expanding, and exploiting. So these three E's, were easily being used by the big E, the European empires. So the European empires made use of these methods of exploration, expansion, and exploitation. So such expansion not only involved the military might and the physical violence, but it also was a forceful conversion of the local indigenous population when they were forced to change their religion, their philosophy, their culture, the political concepts that they had, which led to slavery, racism, Orientalism, and so many other creations, as have been observed by Hobsbawm in 1975. Even the Industrial Revolution, which is supposed to be a period of development and progress, did not end colonialism. It merely changed the forms and practices of colonialism. Therefore, it was imminent that liberation movements and eventual independence of the colonies took place in the 20th century, which generated again intense debate attempting to identify and analyze new forms of colonialism. So, I hope by now you have been able to understand that political controls were not only, the way in which the European masters were trying to expand themselves, but through military might, through the forceful conversions of the local indigenous population, the colonizer was trying to damage, was trying to take the indigenous people away from their practices, from their philosophy, from their religious principles. So even during the independence times, new forms of colonialism emerged because they left some traces of what they were practicing earlier, so the forms merely changed. If we try to analyze the impact of the colonial domination on the colonized populations and the effect of this process, we will come to know that there is an evidence of well-documented, explicit policies, practices of inhuman treatment and exploitation of the colonized people. So, indirect methods of subordination were also used, and these people, the colonized people, they were kept away from the academic discussions. So the methods of suppression of culture, was not just limited to introducing their own culture, but also introducing their own language to the extent that the original natural native languages became extinct. And also there was a degradation of the local knowledge and the value systems. So the main reasons behind the lack of analysis on these practices is also linked to the history of aggressive, sophisticated, and persistent colonial assimilation, which resulted in weak communities who were trying to resist the powerful domination. Kalinikos, in his book in 2009, observes that divide and rule had always been a popular strategy among the colonial powers, which consequently oppressed the people to the extent Ferrari in 1970 observes that people, they internalized this oppression and considered this to be a natural order. So that's how the colonial domination was internalized. So you see how much damage has been done to the originality, to the nativity of those people in a particular nation. The creation of a theory and praxis also deconstructs the given realities, and it attempts to emancipate the oppressed people. Which theory are we talking about? The post-colonial theory. So the post-colonial approaches have provided an important tool in analyzing or reconstructing power relations and multiple layers of colonial domination. Such analysis also has been informed and has been encouraged by a number of social movements which aimed at the emancipation and liberation of the enslaved oppressed groups. So the indigenous and anti-racist movements have been particularly influenced by post-colonialism. I hope you have been able to understand a few preliminary things about post-colonialism in this lecture. So in this lecture today, I have talked about how the post-colonial writings and literature are an interaction between the colonizer and the colonized, how the colonies were impacted by the European Empire through the strategies of expansion and exploitation and also cultural domination. It happened to that extent that the individual cultures were suppressed, oppressed, and in the post-colonial literature, these oppressed people are trying to reclaim their autonomy, and they are writing back to the empire. Now, what is this empire? The European powers, the Eurocentric notion. So they are trying to deconstruct the given realities, and they are trying to deconstruct the hegemonic discourse of superiority and the distortions about the colonized that had been constructed by the European powers, the colonizers, in order to show them as inferior. So I hope you have a fair understanding about how the post-colonialism is trying to make us understand the construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction of certain nations, individuals, and subjects. We will learn more about post-colonialism in the next lecture. Thank you.